Do I really belong at this table? Jasmine Hayes asked, her voice cutting through the soft hum of classical jazz and the muted clink of crystal glasses, the question hanging like a lightning bolt in the opulent dining room of the Starlight Rooftop Lounge in Manhattan. The chandeliers above cast fractured reflections across polished mahogany, the scent of truffle oil and roasted ducks swirling in the air, mingling with the faint aroma of champagne bubbles rising in delicate flutes. Heads subtly turned, forks paused mid-air, and the murmur of elite diners faltered as Damien Caldwell, the billionaire seated at the corner table, raised an eyebrow, a faint smirk tugging at the corner of his lips. He had the perfect tailored gray suit, shoes that glimmered under the soft amber light, and an air of control that seemed to compress the space around him. Jasmine's almond-shaped eyes did not flinch. They scanned the table, taking in the glances of the room, the subtle smirks of Damien's entourage, the way the waitstaff exchanged quiet looks, and the way her own heartbeat matched the tempo of the soft jazz. She held a tray with one hand, steady, almost balancing the fine crystal like it was an extension of herself, and she straightened her posture, a quiet declaration that she belonged here. 3 months ago, Jasmine had graduated top of her class in hospitality management, earned a scholarship through relentless effort, and yet chose to work in high-end restaurants to observe, to learn, to understand the undercurrents of power she would one day navigate. Tonight was different. Tonight, she was not invisible. Damien leaned back in his chair, adjusting his cufflinks, his sharp blue eyes narrowing slightly as he assessed her with a practiced gaze, one that had felled countless business rivals. He had spent years mastering control in boardrooms, in negotiations, in social rooms where influence was currency, and yet Jasmine's simple question, polite yet assertive, introduced a variable he could not calculate. The air between them thickened, warm and almost tangible, as she took a cautious step closer, the heels of her shoes clicking softly on the marble floor. The guests at nearby tables exchanged glances, some curious, some expectant, others dismissive, but all captivated by the disruption of the usual order. Damien's smirk widened almost imperceptibly, but his eyes betrayed a flicker of surprise, a recognition that this small act of courage carried weight beyond its apparent simplicity. Jasmine allowed a small, courteous smile to accompany her request, her voice calm, but carrying an undercurrent of determination honed through years of navigating spaces where she was overlooked. The room seemed to hold its collective breath as he leaned forward slightly, the dim golden light catching the angular features of his face, the polished silver of his watch catching the glow like a beacon. For a moment, the world outside the lounge ceased to exist. The hum of the city, the distant sirens, the faint click of cameras behind the scenes, all faded as Damien considered, his hand resting lightly on the stem of his wine glass, the liquid catching the light like liquid gold. Jasmine's eyes met his, unflinching, her presence a quiet challenge, a question of dignity, of respect, of space claimed not by wealth but by confidence and self-assurance. And then, as if the tension had been measured and stretched to its limit, Damien spoke, his voice measured, controlled, yet carrying a note of genuine surprise that no one at the table could have anticipated. The words sliced through the air, soft yet resolute. Yes, you may join me. The room exhaled as if a storm had passed, and Jasmine's lips curved into a subtle, knowing smile, one that acknowledged not just her victory in that moment, but the shift she had orchestrated in the room, the silent recalibration of power, the recognition that presence and intelligence could command space just as effectively as wealth or status. Every flicker of the chandeliers, every ripple in the polished tabletop, seemed to echo the lesson of the evening, that courage wrapped in dignity could tilt even the most unyielding hierarchies, and that sometimes the quietest question could create the loudest ripple in a room built on privilege, expectation, and assumed superiority. The room settled into an almost tangible quiet, the chandeliers casting soft reflections across polished wood tables, the faint hum of the city below filtering through the floor-to-ceiling windows. Jasmine Hayes moved with deliberate grace, sliding her chair out just enough to sit opposite Damien Caldwell, her hands resting lightly on the edge of the table, fingers brushing the linen tablecloth. Each movement was measured, composed, a silent declaration that she belonged in this space not because of the uniform she wore, but because of the confidence she carried. Damien observed her with a mixture of curiosity and restraint, his blue eyes sharp yet unthreatening, analyzing her posture, the subtle rise and fall of her chest as she inhaled calmly, the slight tilt of her head as she considered her first words. The table between them held a carefully arranged selection of dishes, roasted salmon glistening under the amber light, a small serving of truffle risotto, and a fresh arugula salad, the presentation immaculate, the colors vivid against white porcelain plates. Jasmine began speaking, her voice even, articulate, and deliberate, describing the ingredients of each dish with precise detail. The sourcing of the salmon from sustainable fisheries in Maine, the risotto made with arborio rice imported from Italy, the arugula freshly harvested from local New York farms. Her words carried subtle authority, a demonstration of knowledge that transcended her role as a waitress, capturing the attention of Damien not with flamboyance, but with quiet competence. Damien nodded occasionally, a faint crease appearing on his brow as he processed her observations, the usual arrogance tempered by genuine interest. Around them, the room continued its quiet ballet of diners, servers, and staff, but the center of attention had shifted imperceptibly. The power dynamic reoriented, not through loud gestures or dominance, but through the clarity and intelligence of Jasmine's insights. She explained the ideal pairing of wines with each course, noting the notes of oak and vanilla in the Chardonnay and the subtle hints of blackberry and spice in the Pinot Noir, her phrasing precise, her tone confident yet warm. Damien raised his glass slightly, acknowledging her suggestions with a nod, and a subtle shift occurred in his expression, a blend of respect and astonishment, as if he had not anticipated such a well-rounded understanding from someone outside the boardroom. The soft glow of candlelight reflected in his eyes, highlighting the moment of recognition, and Jasmine continued, weaving anecdotes of chefs she had trained with, the techniques she had learned during her hospitality courses, and the moments of subtle creativity that made each dish memorable. Each sentence was deliberate, yet fluid, drawing Damien further into a conversation that blurred the boundaries between server and executive, each word a gentle assertion of her presence and intellect. The murmurs from neighboring tables faded into background noise, the soft jazz now a cushion rather than a distraction, as the atmosphere focused entirely on the interaction unfolding at this single table. Jasmine maintained eye contact, her smile unobtrusive but warm, signaling both confidence and ease, allowing Damien to feel challenged yet unthreatened, intrigued yet respectful. She asked subtle questions about his experiences with fine dining, guiding the conversation to shared observations without overstepping, demonstrating both curiosity and empathy, qualities that had served her well in navigating spaces where she was often overlooked. Damien found himself leaning slightly forward, engaging in the dialogue with a measured tone, acknowledging her insights, and offering his perspective on international cuisines and culinary trends, a conversation that might have seemed ordinary under different circumstances, but was charged here with the tension of reversed expectations. Jasmine responded with thoughtful observations, anecdotes, and reflections that were personal yet professional, her words resonating in a way that commanded attention without demanding it, her presence a quiet assertion of equality. The delicate balance of power at the table had shifted subtly yet decisively, the room unaware of the transformation taking place, the exchange demonstrating that intellect, poise, and dignity could quietly recalibrate authority, leaving Damien both impressed and reconsidering the assumptions he had carried into the evening. The conversation at the table continued with a quiet intensity, the soft light from the chandeliers highlighting the subtle expressions on both Jasmine Hayes and Damien Caldwell. Each gesture, each pause in their dialogue, carried weight, a silent exchange of observation and understanding. Jasmine leaned slightly forward, resting her hands lightly on the edge of her chair, and continued to share insights about the dishes before them, explaining the texture, the balance of flavors, and the delicate interplay between the roasted salmon and the subtle hints of herbs in the risotto. Damien listened intently, his gaze steady yet softened, a silent acknowledgement of the depth of knowledge that Jasmine brought to the table. Around them, the murmurs of other diners continued, but they seemed distant, muted, as if the room itself had shifted to focus on this exchange. Jasmine spoke of the sourcing of ingredients, highlighting the farms where the produce was grown, the care taken to select each component, and the methods used by chefs to maintain the integrity of each flavor. Her voice was calm, articulate, and precise, and with every word, she demonstrated a mastery of the culinary world that went beyond her role as a waitress, a subtle yet powerful assertion of her capability and intelligence. Damien found himself responding, sharing observations about international cuisines he had encountered during his travels, noting the intricate techniques used by chefs he admired, and reflecting on how culinary arts mirrored strategy and precision in business. Their conversation flowed seamlessly, a dance of intellect and insight, with Jasmine guiding it gently, maintaining her composure and commanding presence without needing to elevate her tone. The ambient lighting caught the glimmer of the wine glasses, the polished silverware, and the pristine plates, each element reflecting the sophistication of the evening while also framing Jasmine's quiet confidence. The soft notes of the live jazz band provided a soundtrack to their interaction, punctuating moments of insight with gentle, melodic interludes that seemed to underscore the subtle shifts in attention and authority at the table. Guests nearby began to take notice, their attention drawn to the unusual dynamic unfolding in front of them. But Jasmine remained focused, her eyes meeting Damien's with a steady assurance that spoke volumes about her understanding of the space she occupied. Damien's posture relaxed slightly, the initial reserve giving way to a mixture of curiosity and respect, as he realized that Jasmine's presence was not merely functional, but transformative in the context of the evening. Her demeanor, her articulation, and her insights challenged the assumptions he had unconsciously carried, prompting him to reconsider the ease with which power could dominate a room when met with quiet competence and grace. Each exchange was measured yet engaging, a demonstration of subtle authority that did not rely on wealth, title, or intimidation, but on clarity, expertise, and self-assured presence. Jasmine's ability to maintain poise while presenting her knowledge and engaging Damien in meaningful dialogue shifted the balance of the interaction in a way that was unspoken but undeniably felt, a testament to the power of preparation, intellect, and composure in spaces designed to favor status and privilege. As the evening progressed, the attention of those around the table seemed to gravitate toward Jasmine's confident explanations and thoughtful questions, the elegance of her manner commanding respect without the need for spectacle, and Damien's responses evolved from initial polite engagement to a genuine exchange, marked by nods, reflective glances, and the subtle gestures of acknowledgement that accompanied his growing appreciation for her skill and perspective. The atmosphere at the Starlight Rooftop Lounge seemed to pulse with a quiet intensity as Jasmine Hayes continued her engagement with Damien Caldwell, each word and gesture carefully measured, each movement a subtle assertion of presence. The polished marble floor reflected the soft glow of overhead lights, casting elongated shadows that danced gently across the walls, while the faint strains of jazz provided a soothing yet alert backdrop to the exchange at the corner table. Jasmine spoke about the balance of flavors in the meal, noting how the roasted salmon paired harmoniously with the subtle acidity of a lemon vinaigrette, and how the risotto's texture complemented the delicate crisp of seasonal vegetables. Her voice was calm and deliberate, articulating observations with precision and clarity that invited Damien into a dialogue of mutual respect rather than hierarchical instruction. Damien responded with thoughtful questions, probing further into her understanding of culinary techniques, the sourcing of ingredients, and the nuances that distinguished a well-prepared dish from an exceptional one. He leaned slightly forward, elbows resting lightly on the table, eyes focused, absorbing each insight, the habitual armor of corporate command softened by genuine curiosity. The other diners, still maintaining a quiet reverence for the evening's ambience, began to notice the unusual flow of conversation, the way Jasmine directed it with skill, blending factual knowledge with engaging anecdotes from her previous experience working in high-end kitchens and attending specialized culinary workshops. She described the method by which the chefs infused subtle flavors into each course, the importance of temperature control in maintaining the integrity of ingredients, and the careful attention required to ensure every plate, was as aesthetically pleasing as it was flavorful. Damien's nods became more frequent, his expressions a mix of intrigue and subtle admiration, as he recognized that Jasmine's competence extended far beyond her role as a server, reflecting a breadth of knowledge and a depth of understanding that demanded respect. The delicate interplay between their dialogue continued, Jasmine maintaining eye contact with composed assurance, her hands occasionally gesturing to emphasize a point, her demeanor radiating quiet confidence, and Damien responding with consideration. The habitual dominance he exercised in boardrooms replaced by attentive engagement and thoughtful acknowledgement. The ambience of the lounge, from the flickering candlelight to the soft murmur of the city below, provided a cinematic backdrop to this interaction, reinforcing the sense that the power dynamic at the table had shifted subtly yet unmistakably. Jasmine's composure and insight commanded attention without fanfare, demonstrating that authority could be established through intellect, poise, and the thoughtful articulation of knowledge rather than by title or wealth. Damien, increasingly captivated by the conversation, allowed himself to be led into a discussion of broader culinary philosophies, appreciating the subtle ways Jasmine connected technique with creativity, tradition with innovation, and flavor with presentation. Each shared observation deepened the connection between them, a silent acknowledgement of skill, respect, and a recalibration of expectations that extended beyond the immediate context of the meal. The room seemed to recognize the transformation occurring at the table, the shift in perception, the subtle yet unmistakable assertion of value and intelligence. And Jasmine Hayes, with each composed word and deliberate gesture, continued to redefine the conversation, challenging the preconceptions of everyone present while establishing her rightful place at the table, not merely as a server, but as an equal participant in the evening's dialogue. As the main course was served, Jasmine Hayes continued to guide the conversation with a quiet authority, drawing Damien Caldwell into a discussion that flowed seamlessly from culinary technique to the philosophy behind presentation and taste. Each plate, she explained, seemed to come alive, the roasted salmon glistening under the ambient light, the risotto steam curling upward in delicate wisps, and the vibrant greens of the arugula reflecting a freshness that mirrored Jasmine's own composed energy. Damien listened attentively, his hand resting lightly on the stem of his wine glass, the subtle movement of his fingers betraying the intrigue he felt, a recognition that Jasmine's understanding and articulation transcended the boundaries of her role as a server. Around them, the room maintained its refined hush, the soft rustle of menus, the muted laughter of distant tables, and the gentle tapping of silverware providing a backdrop that made the exchange at their corner table feel intimate and elevated. Jasmine's voice remained steady, measured, and deliberate as she spoke about the sourcing of ingredients, the importance of seasonality in achieving balance, and the careful preparation required to bring out the inherent qualities of each component on the plate. Her knowledge was precise yet approachable, inviting Damien to engage, to ask questions, and to consider perspectives that had not occurred to him despite his extensive experience. He leaned in slightly, nodding in acknowledgement, his tone measured as he shared his own observations from his travels, noting subtle differences in flavor profiles and culinary traditions he had encountered in various countries. Jasmine responded with thoughtful insight, her words weaving connections between technique, creativity, and presentation, demonstrating not only expertise but also an intuitive understanding of how food could communicate elegance, care, and subtlety. The ambient lighting reflected softly off the polished surfaces, illuminating the determined calm in Jasmine's eyes, the slight tension in Damien's jaw softening as he recognized the depth of her knowledge and the clarity of her perspective. Every gesture, from the careful placement of a fork to the way she gestured to a detail on the plate, reinforced the understated authority she had cultivated, a presence that demanded attention through competence and composure rather than volume or position. The soft notes of the live jazz band punctuated moments of reflection, creating an almost cinematic rhythm to the exchange, each note a gentle reinforcement of the dialogue unfolding, while the panoramic view of the Manhattan skyline provided a sense of grandeur and perspective that underscored the significance of the interaction. Damien found himself responding with greater engagement, considering ideas he had not previously entertained, reflecting on nuances and subtleties that Jasmine articulated with clarity and elegance. The subtle shift in the room was perceptible, a recalibration of attention and respect, as those who had initially regarded Jasmine merely as staff began to observe the skill, intellect, and poise she displayed. Her presence redefined expectations, demonstrating that authority and influence could manifest through expertise, preparation, and quiet confidence, leaving an impression that extended far beyond the table and reverberated in the attentive awareness of the diners around them. The conversation continued, unhurried yet purposeful, with Jasmine navigating each turn with grace, guiding Damien through insights and reflections that expanded the dialogue, deepened mutual understanding, and subtly reshaped the dynamics of respect and acknowledgement at the table, making the evening an encounter not just of meal and discussion, but of perspective, presence, and unspoken power. The evening air around the rooftop terrace carried a gentle warmth, a soft breeze brushing against the edge of the floor-to-ceiling windows, bringing with it the subtle scent of the city below, mingled with the refined aroma of the dishes on the table. Jasmine Hayes continued her calm, deliberate explanation of the intricacies of the dessert course, detailing the delicate balance of textures, the contrast of flavors, and the artistry behind the presentation. The panna cotta glistened under the ambient light, a perfect silhouette against the deep indigo of the plate, while the berry coulis offered a vivid splash of color, vibrant yet understated. Damien Caldwell observed, a mixture of surprise and admiration etching across his features, as he realized the depth of Jasmine's expertise, the way she connected the experience of food with an almost philosophical understanding of taste, balance, and enjoyment. He asked questions about the inspiration behind the dish, the influence of seasonal ingredients, and the techniques used to achieve the perfect consistency, and Jasmine responded with poise, explaining each element with clarity and insight, her tone calm, composed, and confident, demonstrating not just technical knowledge, but also the intuition that comes from passion and experience. Around them, the soft chatter of other diners continued, but the focal point of attention had shifted imperceptibly toward Jasmine, whose presence commanded attention through intellect and grace rather than title or status. The subtle lighting highlighted her composed demeanor, the gentle movements of her hands, the way her posture radiated assurance, and Damien found himself leaning slightly forward, genuinely engaged, acknowledging the sophistication and thoughtfulness of her observations. Jasmine spoke about the interplay of flavors, the layering of aromas, and the importance of pacing and tasting, her descriptions vivid enough to allow Damien to imagine each nuance with remarkable clarity. He nodded thoughtfully, occasionally offering reflections from his travels, noting differences in culinary traditions and the subtleties that distinguished one approach from another, and Jasmine listened attentively, responding with comments that were insightful, respectful, and reflective of her deep understanding. The city lights outside the window shimmered against the glass, their reflections mingling with the warm glow of the candles on the table, casting an ethereal ambience over the scene, while the soft strains of jazz underscored the rhythm of their dialogue, punctuating moments of contemplation and revelation with gentle melodic accents. As the conversation deepened, Damien's usual composure and authority subtly shifted, the recognition of Jasmine's competence and perspective altering the balance of respect and attention at the table. Her calm articulation, combined with a presence that was both confident and unassuming, demonstrated that true influence could emerge not from position or wealth, but from knowledge, grace, and the ability to communicate effectively. Guests nearby sensed the quiet transformation, noticing the mutual respect developing in real time, the subtle recalibration of power, and the undeniable impression that Jasmine was no ordinary server, her understanding and demeanor commanding acknowledgement without demanding it. The exchange moved seamlessly, a measured dance of intellect and awareness, with each participant attuned to the other, the room seemingly adjusting to the presence of competence, poise, and thoughtful engagement. Jasmine's confidence, composure, and articulate observations continued to guide the flow of the conversation, transforming what might have been a simple dinner into an encounter rich with insight, mutual respect, and the quiet assertion of authority, leaving Damien both impressed and contemplative, recognizing that influence and presence could manifest in ways far beyond the conventional markers of power, and that a thoughtful, composed individual could quietly redefine expectations and command attention through the sheer force of expertise and dignity. The conversation between Jasmine Hayes and Damien Caldwell shifted into a space of quiet reflection, the flickering candlelight casting gentle shadows across the polished table as the city skyline glimmered in the background. Jasmine spoke softly about the subtleties of seasoning and the way balance in a dish could mirror balance in life, her words flowing naturally, carrying insight without the need for grand gestures. Damien listened, the lines of tension around his eyes softening, a small, genuine smile appearing as he considered her observations and the thoughtfulness behind each one. Around them, the ambient sounds of the lounge continued, glasses clinking softly, servers moving with precision, but the focus remained on the corner table where the dynamic had transformed from hierarchical expectation to mutual engagement. Jasmine's composure remained steady, her posture relaxed yet attentive, as she shared an anecdote about a recent training session with young chefs, illustrating the importance of patience, precision, and respect in any creative endeavor, whether in the kitchen or beyond. Damien responded with curiosity, asking questions that reflected a willingness to understand, to see beyond assumptions, and to appreciate perspectives he might have previously overlooked. The conversation moved seamlessly, with Jasmine guiding the dialogue through thoughtful explanations and measured insights, her calm authority gently drawing Damien into a space where listening became a form of engagement, and respect was expressed through consideration rather than mere acquiescence. The warm glow of the ambient lighting highlighted subtle details, the careful alignment of silverware, the delicate texture of each dish, and the quiet confidence in Jasmine's expression, all underscoring the sophistication and care she brought to every aspect of her role. Damien's demeanor continued to evolve, a visible shift from measured observation to attentive engagement, as he acknowledged the depth of her knowledge, the clarity of her reasoning, and the poise with which she navigated the space around her. Jasmine continued to illustrate the interplay of flavors, textures, and presentation, noting the way subtle contrasts could heighten the dining experience, and Damien found himself reflecting on how these lessons applied not only to cuisine, but to broader aspects of leadership, strategy, and human interaction. The ambient jazz underscored their conversation, a gentle rhythm punctuating moments of understanding and insight, while the soft murmur of the city beyond the windows created a serene, expansive backdrop. Jasmine's subtle gestures, tilting a plate, demonstrating the proper way to present a dish, the way she emphasized a point with her hands, added dimension to her narrative, reinforcing her quiet authority and ensuring that every word carried the weight of experience, knowledge, and intent. Damien nodded in acknowledgement, occasionally leaning forward, engaged not only with the content of the discussion, but with the presence and intelligence that Jasmine exuded, recognizing that this interaction had shifted the parameters of influence and respect at the table. Guests nearby, though not directly involved, could sense the transformation, the subtle recalibration of attention, and the quiet assertion of competence that Jasmine projected, leaving an impression that resonated beyond the immediate conversation. Each exchange, each thoughtful observation, continued to solidify the dynamic where expertise, poise, and self-assurance defined authority, demonstrating that influence is most compelling when it is wielded with clarity, empathy, and dignity, allowing Jasmine to command respect and presence naturally, and leaving Damien contemplative, intrigued, and visibly impressed by the depth and quality of engagement unfolding before him. As the evening advanced, the ambient lighting in the Starlight Rooftop Lounge softened further, casting long, warm reflections across the polished mahogany tables and the delicate glassware. Jasmine Hayes continued to speak with calm authority, her insights into the final course weaving a story of craftsmanship, attention to detail, and the subtle artistry required to bring each dish to life. Damien Caldwell listened intently, leaning slightly forward, the usual assertive posture of a CEO, giving way to genuine curiosity and engagement. He asked questions about the sources of the ingredients, the seasonal selection of produce, and the precise methods used by chefs to maintain the integrity of flavor, and Jasmine responded with clarity and poise, providing thorough explanations that combined technical knowledge with practical experience. Around them, the soft background hum of conversation and the gentle clinking of cutlery continued, but the focus of the room seemed to concentrate subtly on their table, the exchange drawing the attention of nearby diners who could sense the unusual dynamic. Jasmine's composure and careful articulation commanded respect effortlessly. She gestured naturally, emphasizing key points with the tilt of her hand or the subtle movement of a finger, her presence unassuming yet undeniably commanding. Damien nodded occasionally, reflecting on her explanations, recognizing not only the breadth of her knowledge, but also the confidence and grace with which she conveyed it. Each sentence from Jasmine was deliberate, thoughtful, and measured, revealing an understanding that went far beyond the superficial tasks associated with her role, demonstrating insight, preparation, and poise. The soft flicker of candlelight and the glint of the city skyline visible through the windows added a cinematic quality to the scene, creating an atmosphere where intellect and presence were the currencies of influence rather than status or wealth. Jasmine continued to discuss nuances in flavor balance, the interaction of textures, and the visual presentation of the dishes, her voice even, steady, and confident, each word carrying subtle authority that demanded attention and engagement. Damien engaged with the conversation with increasing openness, asking reflective questions, sharing observations from his own experiences in travel and fine dining, and offering comments that indicated a growing appreciation for her perspective and expertise. The energy at the table shifted, not with volume or dominance, but through the quiet, deliberate exchange of ideas, the mutual recognition of competence, and the demonstration of respect earned through skill and poise. Guests nearby noticed the interaction, sensing the subtle change in power and the understated command Jasmine held through knowledge and composure, drawing quiet admiration and shifting the perception of her role in the room. Damien, increasingly intrigued and respectful, leaned in to listen more closely. Acknowledging the depth of her understanding and the clarity of her insights, the evening unfolding as a testament to the influence of intellect, confidence, and dignity. The discussion moved seamlessly, balancing curiosity, analysis, and thoughtful observation, as Jasmine skillfully guided the dialogue, revealing layers of expertise, experience, and awareness that commanded acknowledgement. The soft ambient jazz underscored their exchange, punctuating moments of reflection and insight with gentle rhythm, while the glow from the city below and the reflections on the glassware created a serene, immersive atmosphere. Each interaction, each carefully chosen word, contributed to a subtle recalibration of perception and authority at the table, illustrating how knowledge, poise, and articulate communication can transform the dynamic of a room, commanding attention and respect naturally, and leaving Damien both impressed and contemplative as he absorbed the depth, skill, and confidence Jasmine displayed effortlessly in every aspect of their engagement. As the evening drew to a close, the Starlight Rooftop Lounge glimmered under the soft ambient light, the Manhattan skyline stretching beyond the windows in a tapestry of shimmering golds and silvers. Jasmine Hayes sat with an effortless grace, the subtle curve of a smile playing across her lips, her eyes calm and confident as she gently pushed her chair back and allowed the last course to settle. Damien Caldwell, once the embodiment of corporate control and composed authority, now leaned back with a quiet, reflective expression, his gaze tracking the flicker of the city lights as he processed the subtle shift that had taken place across the span of the evening. Conversation at the table had moved beyond the superficial pleasantries of dining into a space of shared insight and mutual respect, a nuanced understanding of craft, care, and observation that transcended roles and titles. Jasmine spoke softly about the balance of the evening, the importance of attention to detail, the deliberate pacing of a meal, and the way thoughtful preparation could transform ordinary moments into meaningful experiences. Damien listened intently, nodding occasionally, acknowledging not just her expertise, but the composure and intelligence with which she had carried herself throughout the night. The glow of the chandeliers and the reflections in the polished surfaces of the lounge seemed to frame the moment, highlighting the quiet authority Jasmine had established without assertion or dominance, the type of influence that drew attention by merit rather than expectation. Around them, the subtle murmur of other diners continued, but the energy at the table had shifted. The dynamic transformed from one of assumed hierarchy to one of earned acknowledgement, the recognition that competence, presence, and dignity commanded respect in a way that no title or wealth alone could achieve. Jasmine's gestures were measured and natural, her explanations precise yet approachable, and Damien's responses reflected a growing appreciation for her perspective, her careful consideration, and her skillful navigation of social and professional cues that had often gone unnoticed by those around her. The final course was cleared with delicate efficiency, the plates removed and replaced with a sense of completion, yet the conversation lingered, flowing seamlessly into reflections on shared experiences, broader insights, and the quiet power of attention, observation, and thoughtful interaction. Damien's expression softened further, a subtle acknowledgement passing across his features, a recognition of the skill, grace, and intelligence Jasmine had displayed, not just in her knowledge of cuisine, but in her ability to command a space through quiet confidence. The city lights outside cast their glow across the table, shimmering on crystal glasses and silverware, providing a serene backdrop to an evening that had been transformed through presence, poise, and intellect. Jasmine's composure, her articulate reflections, and the calm assurance she carried created a lasting impression, a testament to the influence of thoughtful action and the subtle recalibration of perception. Damien, visibly moved, met her gaze with a sense of respect and quiet admiration, understanding that the encounter had shifted more than the dynamics of a single dinner. It had demonstrated the enduring power of preparation, knowledge, and the elegance of measured, confident presence in any environment. The room, the lights, the city beyond, and the soft notes of jazz provided the final cadence to an evening that had quietly but definitively reversed expectations, establishing Jasmine Hayes not just as a participant, but as a quietly commanding presence, leaving Damien reflective, impressed, and profoundly aware of the resonance of dignity and intelligence in a world accustomed to conventional markers of authority.